We have a very special guest who we're going to be introducing in just a couple minutes. But before we do that, I do want to show the trailer to her new film, which is what we're here to talk about today. It's a documentary, terrific documentary. Russ and I both watched it last night after the Jimmy Dore show. We caught it a late show, very late show. But
hardest working men in show business.
Yes, but it was well worth staying up for. It's called Removed: Black Erasure in Boston. Let's take a quick look at the trailer before we bring our guest in.
Yes, Boston is home to winning sports teams and elite universities. But some might say that there are two Bostons.
If you look at City Hall, no one's talking about that specific racial and historical component that Black people are the ones that are being removed.
There's a huge, significant difference in lived experiences, and we know this because of the wealth report. We're at $8.
This whole plan of gentrification isn't a new concept. In every city you go into in the Northeast, they kept moving Black people out of the inner city. So it's a plan. It's been in place for a long time.
While the displacement isn't as bad as 1963, it hasn't gotten much better now.
It's by design that they've created spaces where we are no longer seen anymore. They're wiping us out one community at a time, and they're getting away with it. This is gentrification. Franklin Park has been a place where we have built community, and all these things are at risk.
Why is the mayor willing to throw herself on this sword, do or die, for this project? It's not about soccer. It's about the additional profits that can be made in this entertainment complex.
It's a disrespect that you would take public parkland and then give it to a private group to control it.
And this project is Emmett Till's mama pulling back a curtain. And if people don't look at what's behind that curtain, it's coming to them.
All right. Excellent. And without further ado, we're going to introduce our guest, the director of that film, longtime friend of ours. You all know who she is, independent journalist and commentator and filmmaker, of course, and host of the Sabby Show, our friend Sabrina Salvati. Sabby, great to see you again.
Hello. Great to see you guys. I know it's been a while.
It has. It's been a while. It's been
How
too
you been,
long.
Sabby?
I've been busy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This entire year has been pretty hectic for me, more than I could have imagined. That's part of the reason why I know a number of people are like, go on shows. I haven't done appearances in a while because I've just been so busy with the documentary, of course, also with my own show with RBN, and then also the Boston Mutual Aid Group. So there's just been a lot that's been going on. And you guys know this when it comes to filmmaking. It does take up a lot of your time.
Oh, it's incredibly time intense.
Yeah.
Incredibly.
So it's nice to be able to get back out there again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, we feel you. We've been extremely busy too. I'm having to like turn people down when they ask me to come on, and I hate doing it, but like I mean, time is really, really short. I mean, it's just been a crazy year. There's been, hundreds of news stories to keep up with every week, like deciding what you're going to cover. That's the hardest part. That was always the hardest part. But now it's even harder. Now every show, there's like 30 stories to choose from. You got to whittle it down to the 6 or 7 that you have time for. It's really crazy. And on top of making a film, it's a huge workload.
Yeah, we're inspired by your sign there. So glad you're here. We're gonna make a sign saying "Go away."
Yeah, right. Yeah, change the channel. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, let's talk about this film. I saw it last night. It was great. It is premiering at 4 p.m. today, 4 p.m. Eastern, in all of its ultra high def 4K glory. Right, you uploaded the full 4K version of it. You can't stream it in 4K, but now you'll get the ultra high def version. That premieres at 4 o'clock this afternoon. So make sure you head to Sabby's channel. The link to that premiere is in the description of this video on the YouTube side. So make sure that you do that after the show today. Make it a double header and go watch Sabby's film if you haven't already. You mentioned at the very beginning of the movie that you went to Boston for grad school, and upon arriving, you noticed that there weren't many Black people around. And I always assumed that you grew up in Boston, but apparently not. So where did you grow up, and why did you decide to stay in Boston after college?
So I grew up in different places because my parents were military. So we lived overseas. I lived in, the Carolinas. I lived in, my family's originally from Maryland. So we've lived in different places.
Right.
And I have to say, with Boston in particular, there's no city like Boston in the United States. It's very, very different. And I think that upon arriving to Boston, I went to Northeastern University for grad school, which is important because they're a part of the problem that's mentioned in this documentary.
Right.
And I noticed it right away. Like when I came here, I was like, this is okay. So where are all the, and what you come to find out is that there's a lot of hyper-segregation in Boston. It's gotten better over the years. I've been here since 2011. So I've been here for a while. So it has improved. But I can compare it to Chicago, where if you've ever been to Chicago, when you go there, you can see it. It's hyper like segregation. And I think that when you're coming from places like the DC, Baltimore, like Metro, if you're coming from the Carolinas, if you're coming from North Carolina, South Carolina, et cetera, it is a culture shock and it's very different. Being a part of a military family, like I went to school with everybody. Like we went to school with everyone. And I think the difference that you notice is that when you come here in Boston, that the Black neighborhoods, that there were lines drawn so that there is that deep separation. And I think that if you don't venture into those areas, which a lot of people who come here don't, because everything that you're used to using is in Boston proper. So when most people come here, they go to Boston proper. That's where most of the universities are. And then some are also in Cambridge, but most of them are in that area. A lot of the jobs are in that area, right? But the Black population in Boston over the years, which you'll see in this documentary, they've been pushed further and further south of the city. So at one point in time, Black people did live in Boston proper. They lived in wealthy areas now, like Beacon Hill. They did live there. But because of the policies that the city implemented, they were kicked out and pushed to the southern part of the city, which is not easily accessible via public transportation. So a lot of people that move here don't have a car and they rely heavily on the T. That's our public transportation system here. We call it the T. They rely heavily on that. So what that means is that people are less likely to venture to areas that are more difficult for them to get to. That's Roxbury, that's Dorchester, that's Mattapan. And most people stay within Boston proper, or they'll go to Cambridge. It's actually easier for you to get from Boston proper to Cambridge than it is for you to get to Roxbury. So I think the dynamics that are there are really important. And then like a lot of people, I came here for grad school and then I got a job here right after grad school. So that's how I ended up staying here. And I think that's what you see with a lot of these cities, in particular, that rely on the tech sector, the healthcare jobs, the education industry. A lot of people end up in those cities because they come to those cities to go to college. And then after that, they end up finding a job, right? So that's what led me here.
It's true. In my previous career, one of my many previous fake careers, I designed walking tours. And I designed tours in New York, but then my boss would send me, out to DC. I went to Chicago and to Boston to design a couple tours. And I designed a chocolate tour in Back Bay, basically Newbury Street, all the swanky shops. And then I designed a ghost tour in Beacon Hill. And I learned a little bit about the Black history of Beacon Hill when designing that tour. But to go there, you would never know it. You would never know it. It's so true. When you go to Boston, all of the places that people go to are huddled around the Commons, right? Whether it's downtown, Back Bay, Beacon Hill, it's all very centrally located. And I think that has a lot to do with the redlining. So Russ, did you want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, so it was interesting watching this because I have a certain expertise about this subject in New York, partly from being a tour guide, partly just from being interested in the subject, partly because I live in Harlem, where obviously this is a topic that comes up a lot. So it was interesting to see what's different and what's the same. So I think a lot of people don't really know the history of redlining. We saw this come up with the conversation around Mamdani. It was very surprising that even a lot of people who were defending his rent proposals didn't bring up the subject of redlining as the reason that a lot of neighborhoods are economically depressed, and going to some of the kind of systemic issues that I think your documentary touches on. And I saw people make this overt argument that these neighborhoods are bad because the people there don't take care of their neighborhoods, as if it's some moral failing of the people. No conversation about the fact that they systematically destroyed the economic prospects of people in these areas. And today, a lot of those areas are still living with that legacy. A lot of people don't even know about redlining. Can you explain what that was?
Yeah, so redlining, which happened all across the United States in Black communities, it was basically this policy that said that the way I can describe it is if you picture a map and different neighborhoods have different colors. So one neighborhood could be green, another one can be yellow, blue, and then there are the neighborhoods that were red. The red neighborhoods were the ones that basically they said, well, they were Black neighborhoods, that these neighborhoods should not receive loans. So what ended up happening is that even for Black families that lived in those red line areas, even if they had a household income that would make them eligible to get a home loan, they were automatically denied because of where they lived. And this ultimately is one of the things that like prevented Black people, especially when white flight took place, it prevented them from being able to buy those homes in those suburban areas because the banks weren't willing to lend to them because of where they lived. And so I think a lot of people just don't really know about that and understand that. And then you go forward and you look at a lot of those neighborhoods that were redlined. Now these are the neighborhoods that are being gentrified. So now you have developers coming into those neighborhoods because the property value in the red line neighborhoods is going to be cheaper, right? So they come into those neighborhoods, they buy up a block, sometimes 2 blocks, tear down the housing that's there. So the people who live there, they have to move. It's not like you have an option. They have to move. And then the developers, they build what they want there. This is very important when we talk about Roxbury. Roxbury is very close to downtown Boston. And over the past couple of years, developers have decided, you know what, because of its proximity to the financial district, it would actually be good if we start buying up some property around here, building more luxury condos. And they're basically trying to make this a city for people who have money and for people who graduate from the universities here. In fact, this isn't a new thing. It didn't just start under Mayor Wu. This has been in place. It started under Mayor Menino. And then he passed away. Marty Walsh came into power. Marty Walsh said it very blatantly himself during a conference that he wanted Boston to become a place where the college graduates would stay. They wanted it to become that city, and they wanted people with money to move into the city because they said they would invest in the city. So ultimately, over the years, what you have found is a lot of the people who grew up here and have like that thick, like Boston accent, a lot of those people don't live in Boston. So when you watch movies like The Departed or The Town, that's not Boston. Boston is not like that. South Boston looks like I don't know how to explain it. Like they still have the old project housing on the outskirt of South Boston.
Right.
But now if you go down Broadway in South Boston, you see these spin cycle gyms, juice bars, breweries, like that. Like it's not what you see in the movies. That's what Boston used to be. And so I think that if you come here as a tourist, you might be misled. Because the people who are doing the tours, a lot of the tour guides are from Boston, but a lot of them don't live here anymore. They moved to the North Shore, they moved to the South Shore, they were pushed to the South Shore. As you'll find out what happened to a lot of the Black people that were born and raised in Boston, what happened to them. And so it's not what you think it is. Now, this isn't unique to Boston. It's happening in cities all across the country. I highly recommend that people look at the case study of San Francisco so you can find out what happened to the Black community there. Because before it happened in Boston, it happened in San Francisco. That's why today, when you go to San Francisco, you don't see as many Black people there. Look at what's happening in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. It was a big land grab. A lot of the people who grew up there couldn't afford to move back to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina and after the redevelopment. It's even happening in Atlanta, Georgia. So it seems to be more prominent in the Northeast and the West Coast, but it's also happening in the southern cities as well.
Now, this was very interesting to me, that your Irish political class, which was something that happened in most cities that had a large turn of the century immigration. The Italians and the Jews got behind Irish politicians because they arrived already speaking English, and they were closest to being considered white. They were not considered white, but they were closer than Jews and Italians. So you saw this Irish political class in Chicago, certainly saw it in New York. Uniquely in Boston, it lasted into the 90s. Yeah. And also, unlike those other cities, you think of Chicago, you're very aware of the Black population in Chicago. It's a big part of the American history and cultural history. Certainly New York, Harlem, you think of that. Why is the Black population of Boston so forgotten? And is it related to that Irish population dominating the politics of Boston for so long? Is it demographic? Like, why did it work that way there?
Yeah, for those who are not aware, a lot of things changed when Mayor Menino became mayor. So, as your point, like to the 90s, Mayor Menino was the one that kind of broke that hold. And what people may not realize is that prior to the busing situation in Boston, Black people were not allowed to have jobs in government. So Black people were not allowed to be, and also law enforcement. They couldn't be police officers. They couldn't be firefighters. They couldn't be teachers. This was just how it was. Like here in Boston, and we talk a lot about racism in the South, but I think a lot of people just don't realize how racist the system was here in Boston. So Black people were not allowed to have those jobs. A number of people that I interviewed for this documentary also explained to me that at one point, Black people weren't supposed to go downtown. So there's a lot of that happened. But when Mayor Menino came in, I think he kind of shifted things a little bit. Part of this started after the busing riots that happened in Boston. So busing was very brutal here. One of the things that was very difficult about making this documentary is that the Black history in Boston has pretty much, for the most part, been erased. I went through a number of archives. Very difficult to find this information. I had to go to different residents of Roxbury to ask them if they had pictures from back in the day. And then on top of that, the Boston Globe owns a lot of the busing photos, the archive pictures. So I had to go to the Boston Globe to get permission to get the license to use their photos. Like the information is just, but if you look up any other group in Boston, you can find that information more readily available where you don't have to seek out getting a license from the Boston Globe to get that information to share for a film. So that was one of the things that really stood out to me. Why is the Black population not really spoken about here in Boston? Again, it's because of what you said, that for years, it was Irish Americans that dominated not just city government, but also the press, et cetera. And the Black community here was not something that was to be, it wasn't looked at as something that was positive. It was just like, oh yeah, and there's those Black kids over there in Roxbury. And you're right, and it's sad. Because there have been prominent people that came from Roxbury, people like that worked along with John Coltrane. There are musicians that came from Boston. New Edition came from Boston, right? So, and it's just very weird how the city as a whole just kind of didn't give light to that and chose to pretend as if Black people just weren't here. I have to tell you, I've lived in a lot of different places and I've never seen anything like this before until I came to Boston, where the Black population is literally forgotten about. And there are Black people here, but again, Black people are mostly concentrated in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, not so much Jamaica Plain anymore as it used to be because there's a lot of gentrification that has happened there. But ultimately, a lot of them, because of urban renewal, because of eminent domain, which is a big one, they were relocated to suburban towns that did not have the resources or the infrastructure to thrive, right? Like Brockton or like Taunton. Like that's why you don't see more of us here. But it's weird. It's really weird to me. And I think during making this documentary and interviewing a lot of the people that grew up here and the ones who have been able to stick it out and stay around, they were able to share things with me that I feel like everybody should know about it. It should just be a part of Boston culture, but it's not.
Well, it's so true. I mean, Boston has a reputation for being a racist city. It does. Like New York, that's the joke in New York, is that Boston is a racist. Around the world, we were talking when we interviewed our mutual friend, Professor Mohammed Morandi, who lives in Iran. He was talking about how in Iran they have Jews seated in government. And I made the joke to him. I said, that's more than you could say for Boston. And he got it. He laughed. So, like, around the world, Boston has a reputation for being, like, a particularly racist city, despite the fact that it is in arguably the most liberal state in the country, Massachusetts. And I know Russ had a more thorough sort of question related to that, but I think this is a good segue because, yeah, it has this reputation as being this racist city, yet it's, like, the most reliably Democrat, vote blue city in the country, arguably. Russ, did you want to piggyback on that, or Sabby, whoever wants to take that? I figured that would be a good segue into that.
Well, actually, I kind of wanted to follow up because this is interesting to me. So part of the way, like, yeah, you described that in your documentary, the Irish, when you took over politics back then, it was a spoils system. Like once you took over politics, you took over the civil service. So you used your ability to give jobs to your constituents. That was part of how you stayed in power. So here in New York, we were talking about this the other night with Eric Adams. He was on the force for 20 years. He has a New York cop accent, and the New York cop accent is an Irish accent. It's a distorted echo of this long Irish domination of the police force. But when they brought in civil service exams, it offset that somewhat. And that is how the force started to get more diverse than it was. Like we did not have what you're describing. That is just amazing to me. Was this official policy to keep blacks out of the civil service, or was it just, yeah, we're just not going to give jobs to those people, and it was just unofficial?
It was, we're not going to give jobs to those people. We're going to keep it in the family.
Wow.
That's how it went. Like, it didn't matter if you had the qualifications or not. Like, we're not going to have black police officers. Like, the way that it was explained to me by journalist Yawul Miller is that once they got into city government power, they made it very clear that they were going to keep it among their group of people. And I think one of the things that I noticed looking back at the busing photos and videos from Boston are very horrific. And it's not unique, to Boston. It happened in other places too. But it's the images and the videos that you see of police officers beating kids, of people throwing rocks at the buses. Remember, the kids didn't ask to be bused.
Right.
And it's just, it's horrifying. It's also horrifying to know that it still goes on today. Like, this busing didn't disappear. And that's the other part about me that was really surprised when I moved here. I'm like,
they still bus to different schools in Boston?
They still do busing in Boston, because what was not done, and at that time, what the Black community was asking for, was for the city to fix the schools in their neighborhoods. They weren't asking to be bused to go to schools in the white neighborhoods. That's not what they were asking.
Right.
And we get into this a little bit more in the documentary. However, the decision that was made was that we'll just resolve this problem by busing Black kids to white neighborhoods like South Boston and Charlestown, and busing the white kids to Roxbury and Dorchester. People were killed. Like, I don't think everybody knows this, but people were killed. People were beaten. It was a very, very violent time, physically violent time. But even today, they still have busing. It's an education lottery called Metco. They never fixed those schools in Roxbury and Dorchester. In fact, many of them have been torn down. This whole solution of let's just let your child apply for a charter school, that's becoming a big thing around here. But there's an education lottery called METCO, and the idea is that the parents enter the lottery, and if your child is selected, then your child will get to go to one of the more, I guess, better schools in one of they're going to wealthy white neighborhoods. They're sending kids from Roxbury to Newton, very, very wealthy city right outside of Boston. I talked to someone who was sent from Dorchester to school in Weston. Weston is one of the most wealthiest towns in Massachusetts. To give you an idea, you have Red Sox players that live in Weston. So they never fixed the actual problem, which was fixing those schools in Roxbury and Dorchester so that the books aren't old and falling apart. The kids aren't learning in boiler rooms because they didn't have like the classroom space. Like they never fixed that. And this whole idea of just send them to a school in a town with, they don't know anybody and they don't interact with, and then they have to get back on the bus and come back to their neighborhood. It's just, I don't know. Like I talked to a lot of people about it, and it's really sad how we get to the businesses. A lot of the businesses also were torn down, burned down, have not been rebuilt. And it's sad. It's sad what's happened to Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan. And I think what people have to understand is that even under Mayor Wu, who said that the housing issue was going to be her number one thing that she was going to fix, even under her, she's allowing developers even now to displace Black people in these neighborhoods. So what we've come to learn is that it didn't matter who was in power. At the end of the day, they all basically fit the needs of developers.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that about the busing, because I grew up in Newburgh, New York, and we had a magnet program with busing. And the Newburgh School District encompassed both the mostly Black and brown, very poor inner city and like the middle-class white suburbs where I lived. But it was a lottery system. They had racial quotas. They wanted the virtue signal, because you mentioned virtue signaling a lot as a mechanism of this throughout the documentary. They want the virtue signal of race mixing. Oh, we're going to have a third brown people, a third Black people, a third white people in every school, and that means we're treating everybody equally. Meanwhile, the white parents would request that their kids be sent to the white schools in the suburbs in the town of Newburgh because those were in the best shape. I went to the inner city schools and they were much more run down. They were considered the undesirable schools to go to. So you're not actually making those schools better. In the case of Newburgh, you were just race mixing all of them so that you got the political virtue signal of saying, look, we care about everybody. We're sending a mix of students to each school. Meanwhile, what you're doing is you're really, I won't go as far as to say you're destroying communities, but you're certainly undermining community when you bus kids from one community into 7 different schools. They don't get to know each other. They don't hang out together. They don't build friendships, right? All for what? Also, some virtue signaling libs can get a point for, oh, look how much we care that every school is perfectly mixed. What they don't do is invest in the inner city schools. That problem remains unsolved, and it sounds like what you're describing there. Yeah, it's crazy because Newburgh had a lot of urban renewal in the 60s as well. But one thing I wanted to just point out, because you spent a substantial portion of the film devoting to the planned redevelopment of White Stadium in Franklin Park. And I would just like you to talk a little bit about that because Boston is, of course, a big sports town. And it seems like this is a pattern with professional sports. Omali Yeshitela talks about how the Uhuru movement tried to organize against the Tampa Bay Rays stadium, which was built in the poor Black area. That displaced a lot of people. So what is the state of that project? Because that's ongoing now, as I understand, right? They're basically turning a public space into a public-private partnership with a women's sports team, going to call that stadium their home now.
That's correct. So White Stadium was given to Boston Public Schools. And because Boston is so dense, White Stadium was important because if you played a sport at one of the public schools in Boston and you were in that area, then that meant that if you played football, you would have your football games at White Stadium. If you were on the track team, like you would have those track meets at White Stadium. Mayor Wu has decided to go along with these investors, as they call it, to privatize it. So it has been taken away from Boston Public Schools. and it was given to these wealthy women who, and I really believe at some point, these investors are a part of Michelle Wu's political aspirations down the line. I don't think she just wants to remain mayor. People need to pay attention to her because she kind of flies under the radar. So those are probably the people who will be investing in her political future. And they've given it to developers. We're talking about a project that now costs over $100 million that taxpayers are going to be responsible for. And the community has risen up about this. They have pushed back. Mayor Wu is not one that doesn't meet with the people. She has been confronted multiple times. I confronted her 2 years ago about this housing situation. But at the end of the day, she goes along with big money interests. And this is a pattern that we have seen happen, in particular in Massachusetts. A lot of people who they run on progressive issues and progressive ideas, which I think a lot of us support. But it's like once they get into office, they end up doing the bidding of big money interests. And considering the fact that housing was her number one issue, and she's actually made things worse, the rate of gentrification under her mayorship has increased more than it was under Marty Walsh, more than it did under Mayor Menino. Mayor Menino was like mayor for 20 years. So put that into perspective. These sports teams that are coming in, right? So again, not unique to Boston. This happened in Los Angeles. It happened in Oakland, different places across the country. Boston does not need another sports team. We have 4 professional teams. They're pretty good. I mean, like we've won a lot of championships here.
Oh, I know. New Yorker, believe me, I know. I keep track.
Yeah. So this idea that, well, we need to bring in a women's soccer team here in Boston, it just, all the money is going into developing sports or, I don't know, another brewery or the developments that have happened in the Seaport District, which was very vacant when I first moved here. The only thing that was there when I moved here was Harpoon Brewery, and the rest of it was pretty empty. Right. But now if you go to Seaport in Boston, it's all these fancy restaurants and there's an ice cream museum there now. These are not things that people who are working class that grew up in Boston can afford to even participate in. These things that are being built for people who have money. They're being built for a lot of the college grads. You know, these schools here are very expensive. Boston University is more expensive than Harvard University, believe it or not. So
Is
a lot of the people, yes.
I didn't know that.
BU is ridiculously overpriced. So a lot of the people that come to these schools, a lot of these kids are coming from parents that have money and they're willing to spend it. And so a big part of the problem is what they're building is not for people who are lower income, not for people who are even many of them middle class. And so the whole sports franchise thing, it's been an issue. I know Robert Kraft, who is the owner of the Patriots and also the owner of the New England Revolution. He is also trying to make a stadium for the New England Revolution. That's the male soccer team that we have here in Boston. He wants that here too. And people have to remember, like, it's a dense city. We don't have a lot of space. Too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That means that things are going to be knocked down so that he can get what he wants. This guy's a billionaire. So we got billionaires coming in and just basically pushing everybody else out. Now, a lot of people ask, well, what about working class white people in Boston? That there aren't many of them. There aren't many of us. It's not what you see when you watch these movies like The Town and The Departed. Right. It's not like that. And a lot of the people who grew up in the area that still live here, again, they're in the neighborhoods that you are not going to venture into. They're they're in the southern part of the city. And I think that people really do need to look at everything that happened with urban renewal, because it's not just Boston, it's Detroit, it's Milwaukee, right? It's San Francisco. The fact that these city officials implemented a plan for a highway to go through a Black neighborhood. This happened all across the country. And there were many people that had their homes knocked down and were displaced. And those people weren't compensated for what they lost. This is very important. And then only to not even have the highway built. So we're talking about a loss of generational wealth. We're talking about people being shut out of city jobs. And these are the things when we talk about systemic issues, these are the systemic issues. And I think a lot of times people don't want to get into that. So when we talk about class, and I talk about class a lot on my channel, but when we talk about class, it is very important that people understand, even within those classes, there were things that were targeted towards Black people that were not targeted towards other groups that are part of the same class. And there has been no repair. So what you are seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing this in New York City as well, that the Black voting populace is leaving. The numbers show that when you look at every racial group here in Boston, it is Black people that are the ones that are pushed out. We're the ones leaving. Every other group is increasing. So when it comes to the voting populace, just keep that in mind. When you have like these mayor elections, when you have the governor races, and even for the presidential elections, a lot of those people have gone further south.
Well, when you talk about urban renewal, that has really been the shock troops of gentrification. And it's easy to sell to everybody because the conservatives like it because they'll frame it to them as you're cleaning up crime, you're cleaning up these neighborhoods. The libs like it because you're pitching it as you're finally going to improve these neighborhoods and improve the infrastructure in these neighborhoods.
Right.
The way it winds up playing out in practice, and this is everywhere that I've seen this in effect. Once they go and they knock everything down in the interest of these projects, and they might build some parks, they might clean things up. It is not the people they say they were going to help that they help. The purpose of it, here it was Giuliani. Giuliani was the shock troop of gentrification. He came in and he sent out his Gestapo and cracked down, made the city palatable to the kind of wealthy clientele they wanted. They're not scared getting shot walking down the street. Is it safer and cleaner? Yes. For who? That's always the question. Who did you make it safer and cleaner for? It's the same story all over the country. I've been around the country a lot over the last couple of years. Everywhere you go, and this goes to your mayor there and the virtue signaling that you talk about, it's incredible, this kind of gentrification monoculture that's exactly the same everywhere you go. It's the same shit. It's the poke bowl place. It's the fabulous ramen noodles. It's all the same shit. It's the coffee places everywhere you go. Insofar as it's diverse, it's a diversity of people of the same class. Like these white liberals they are made uncomfortable by being around only white people. They like to have a few people around who are not white, of the type that are sponsoring that women's soccer team that you showed in your documentary. Those are the people they want to be around so that they can feel good about themselves. Look, we're making progress. They don't actually want to help poor people. That's what I've seen everywhere I've gone.
No, and once they come in with one project and they start to purchase more property and they take more property, like it's, we talk about colonialism a lot of times when I talk about Gaza, that Israel was just basically the last stage of colonialism, this idea of this greater Israel project. And essentially, people need to make the connection because all of us can see what's happening in Gaza. We've watched it live streamed for the past couple of years. So we can see it. We see the killing. We see the displacement. We see the ethnic cleansing, right? What people have to understand, no, they're not bombing Black communities, although if you look back in the 70s, there was a community in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania that was bombed, a Black community that was bombed to get them out of there. But they're cleansing the area here too.
Right.
They're getting rid of us too. Like they're not just this is a global thing. This idea that the people that they want in certain spaces are the people that they want to be around, more of the resources, the jobs, the cities. It's a reversed migration that we're seeing that's happening.
Right.
So back in the day, of course, there's white flight where white people left the city. Now we're seeing the exact opposite where
it's their grandkids coming back.
Exactly. They want this to be a place for people with money. Well, they say that, but here's what they're really saying. Who are the people that have money? Right? As a community, Black people, we don't.
Right.
We don't have it like that. Right now, it is predicted that by 2050, we will have a net worth of $0. That's a fact. So we're not the ones with money. So pay attention to what they're really saying when they say we want people with money to move into the city and to invest. They're not talking about people like me. So this displacement that has been happening, it's global. It's happening all over the place. And I just think that there are different ways that it's been done. And I thought it was important to make this documentary about Boston because I think people have different I think a lot of people, they see it as a sports town or a college town. They don't know. When I did the screening recently at Roxbury Community College, even some of the people who came to the screening on the ground who live in Boston had no idea these things were happening. A lot of people don't know. If you don't live in those neighborhoods, you're not seeing this actually take place.
Yeah, no, you would never know. You would never know. That's 100% true. Okay, last topic. The whole film is great. Like I say, I encourage people to watch it. The most emotionally powerful part, in my opinion, is the last section, which deals with mass incarceration. So can you just sort of summarize that last piece of this, because you kind of break the film into different sections, a section on urban renewal, a section on redlining, and then the last one is mass incarceration. And this is, once again, a problem that I think a lot of people are under the misconception that is a bigger problem in the South than it is up north. We hear horror stories about Alabama prisons, Louisiana prisons all the time. But do you want to just set up that last piece of the film?
Yeah, Mac Hudson's story, I think, is very moving. When we filmed that, it was very hard for me, like listening to it, not to get teary-eyed when he talks about what happened to him. And he is someone that was wrongfully accused. He didn't commit the crime. But one of the other tools that has been used to remove Black people from these areas, from those neighborhoods in particular, is mass incarceration. And I want people to think back to the statement that came from Hillary Clinton about how they were predators, calling them super predators. They need to get them out. So that springboarded things. And eventually it got to the point where some of these states, they started to charge juveniles as an adult. So you're basically taking their future away from them. And in Mac Hudson's case, he was wrongfully convicted. But that's like a whole part of his life that he just can't get back.
Yeah, 33 years, right? He was away for
33 years.
Wow.
Just can't get back. And this is another tool that's used to erase Black people. And by the way, this plan didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't start, in Boston. We've all, I think by now, probably heard the videos or the audio of even Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, even back then saying, we got to go after the Black people and we got to go after the hippies. So there are different tools that were used. And in this documentary, talk about gentrification, urban renewal, redlining, and of course, last but not least, mass incarceration, which I think has been one of the most effective tools to remove, in particular, Black males out of Black neighborhoods, out of the household. And that hasn't changed. We have a for-profit prison system in this country. I really believe the reason why they don't want to legalize marijuana federally is because, cops can still use that to imprison you. They can still use that. If we legalize marijuana federally, then it's like, okay, we have all these people that have been locked up because of marijuana. Those people should be exonerated. I live in a state that legalized marijuana, and recreational marijuana we have recreational marijuana shops here as well. But all the people who have marijuana charges here in Massachusetts have not been exonerated for those charges. Right. Meanwhile, you have people making a profit off of it. It's a very, very sad reality. So there are different tools that have been used. And I think it's important that these issues are not just only addressed, but there needs to be some type of repair, right? So obviously, when we talk about city officials, Mayor Wu is not the governor of Massachusetts, but Maura Healey is. And Maura Healey, even right now, is trying to build and expand private prisons for women. This is a money-making system.
Right.
They want to lock people up. So all of these things together have led to the erasure of Black Boston. And when you compare Boston and at the rate that Black people are leaving, and you compare it to some of the other cities, you are going to see some similarities. And then you have to ask, what do all of these cities have in common? There are a lot of jobs here. A lot of people come here because of the jobs. A lot of people come here because of, college, right? Like Boston is number 2 for startups in the nation after Silicon Valley. I don't know if a lot of people realize that. So there's a lot that you can do here, but if you're slapped with the record, especially for something that you did not do, if you are displaced because of gentrification, if you're refused home loans because of redlining, I mean, all these things are working against you. It is going to be difficult for you to become that future generation of potential earners. And that's one of the things that Mac Hudson really breaks down.
Okay, well, the documentary is called Removed, Black Erasure in Boston, premieres in full high def at 4 p.m. Eastern today. So be sure to check that out. And then, Sabby, you're live this evening, right? You got a busy day.
Yes, I am. John Kiriakou is coming on tonight.
Oh, nice.
Awesome.
Yeah. I haven't seen him in a while, so it'll be great to talk to him and get his pick his brain a little bit about these Epstein files and what he think is really going on here with even this Charlie Kirk situation, which I have a new update about that. So it'll be interesting.
All right. Well, after the Due Dissidents today, you heard it. You got a double feature on the Sabby Sabs channel. You got the movie and then the live stream. Sabby, great to talk to you again. Always great to see you. We should do it again sooner this time. Not let so much time pass, but really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a busy day.
It's like 2 years, right?
Yeah, a long time. Yeah.
I've been so busy. And I do want to give respect and shout out to my editor, Scott Hanshew.
Oh, yeah, it was great.
Scott did an amazing job. I filmed this with cell phone. I don't have a professional camera.
Yeah,
I just
looked
used
great.
what I had. And Scott was able to
Sound
turn this
was
around
really
in a
good
way.
too.
Yeah. Great job to Scott.
Oh, it was great. No, it really looks and sounds great. It's very cinematic in that way. And yeah, congrats on it. I know it's a ton of work and paid off. And you are going to shop this around the festivals too, right?
Yeah, so that's what we're working with right now. We just met yesterday to get this into the film festival circuit. And I also am going to be meeting with another person who wants me to do a college tour for this documentary here in Boston. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Awesome. All right, Sabby. Well, thanks for taking the time today. I know you're extremely busy, but it was great to see you again. And congrats on the film. And we will see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Sabby.
Bye-bye.
Please clap.